Welcome to our fourth week of class. This week, we'll be discussing a number of different topics, including the alphabet, accents, and numbers from 0 to 60. Keep in mind that this is our last week for Module 1 in our textbook, and that at the end of this week, we will be taking an exam. Let's start out with the alphabet. I've grouped these into a couple of small rows of letters to make it easier to pronounce. Repeat after me. A, B, C, D, E. The E is sort of like someone punched you in the stomach. E. Let's say it again. A, B, C, D, E. The next row has two letters that sometimes cause confusion for people. This is the G and the J. They're almost backwards to what we have in English. Repeat after me. F, G, H, I, J. Let's say it again. F, G, H, I, J. The third line is relatively easy. K, L, M, N, O. Je répète. K, L, M, N, O. There are a couple of letters which give people difficulty in the fourth line down. They are the Q and the R. I'll read it once and then I'll give you some tips to help you pronounce them better. P, Q, R, S, T. So here's my tip. First, to pronounce the Q and later the U in the last line, what you need to do is go into the bathroom, stand in front of the mirror, and look at yourself. Then lean in and pucker your lips like you're going to give a kiss. Step back away from the mirror, but keep your mouth puckered up and look at what you look like. If your mouth is looking like you're puckered and ready to kiss, you're ready to pronounce the Q and later the U in French. Remember, French is the language of love, so you might as well be ready to go. Q, U. If your mouth is in what I call the permagrin American mouth embouchure, which is your mouth wide open in a grin, you cannot pronounce the Q. The next tip I have is for the R. The R in French requires spit. There are no other ways to say this. You have to kind of hackle it up. R. If you sound kind of like you're hucking a loogie, you're doing it right. R. Let's say this whole line again. P, Q, kissing, R, spitting, that's the ugly part of the French romance, S, D. Our last line, you're going to keep your mouth in the kissy face position for the U. V, W, X, Y, Z. Let's try it again. U, V, W, X, Y, Z. We'll go over this more in class, but this is a good time to pause and practice. Now we'll talk about some accents. There are several different accents that French use. First is the accent grave. The accent grave starts high at the left and goes lower down to the right. You can find it over an E, an A, or a U. Really, the only letter where it changes pronunciation is the E, and it softens the E to differentiate between words that otherwise, for other letters, other letters, A and U, it is used to differentiate between different words that would otherwise be spelled the same. So, let's read the words down here at the bottom. Cuillère, père, frère, mère. You can see all of those have R's so that you can practice your spitting. But also, they have the E with an accent grave. Cuillère, père, frère, mère. When it's over the A or the U, the accent grave does not change the pronunciation. The next accent is the accent aigu. Accent aigu only goes over an E. And when you have this accent, it makes the E sound like a long A. For example, entrée, fiancé, bébé. You can hear that very clearly. The accent circonflexe, also called little housetop by me, doesn't change pronunciation at all. What this does is it represents an S that used to be there in Old French and is now gone. For example, hâte, forêt, gîte, hôpital, flûte. If we put the S back in, oftentimes we can almost see, or sometimes exactly see, an English word. If I put the S back in hâte, this first word, I have H-A-S-T-E, which spells haste, and that's exactly what this means. Forêt, if I put the S after the E, I get forest. Gîte doesn't count. It's like a host home that someone would stay in on a vacation. Hôpital, of course, becomes hospital, and flûte also doesn't work on this particular example. The tréma is our next accent. The tréma goes over either an E or an I when either the E or the I are in combination with another vowel. And what this tréma tells us is that the two vowels should be pronounced separately rather than as a diphthong. A diphthong is when you have two vowels that kind of slide together. So my examples here at the bottom are Noël and Loïc. You can very clearly hear the O, E, and O-I. Noël, Loïc. The last accent used in French is called a cédille, or, as I affectionately call it, the squiggle. The squiggle is what we use with a C to make the letter C sound like an S. For example, français, garçon. If we didn't have the squiggle, the cédille, in these two words, it would be franquet and garçon. Not very pretty. Lastly, let's talk about numbers. There are numbers spelled out for you on page 20 in your book. I have not written the spellings of any of the numbers here. Let's work with 1 through 20 first, but actually I'm going to go to 10 and then stop. So we're going to do these in chunks of 10. Starting here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. All right, a couple of pitfalls that I often see. With pronunciation on the 8, 8, many people pronounce it like wheat, as in wheat bread, but that's not it. You really have to pronounce the U and then the I, U, I, huit. The other thing people have difficulty with is the 4 and the 3 and 4, because of the R. Get your spit huckled up in the back of your throat before you go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Continuing on, we have 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. The 14 and the 13 especially get lots of spit action. Let me say these again. Repeat them after me. 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. Now, let's see. The 17, 18, 19. You may have noticed the pattern. It's 10-7, 17, 10-8, 18, 10-9, 19. This is a pattern that we'll see again later. continuing on through our last numbers, after you reach 20, which is 20, the same numbers repeat over and over. 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30. The same pattern continues through 40 and 50 and 60. 41, 42, 43, 44, 45, 46, 47, 48, 49, 50, and so on. It's the end of the presentation today. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to email me. I'll see you in lab.